All right, welcome everyone to our NAPT webinar on corrective actions and inside of within the QMS Accreditation Manager. So as we go through this today, just a couple of housekeeping items as before. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. Both are available in this, and we'll go ahead and try to get those answered along the way. If you want us to slow down and explain anything, feel free. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and just jump right on in. We are recording this webinar and we'll have this posted on our website at proficiency.org. There are 2 previous on-demand webinars that you can go back and view if you missed out on them. So there are understanding proficiency testing plans. We did that a couple of months ago, and then prior to that, the NAPT intra-manager, how to manage your own proficiency testing program online. So again, if you're interested in seeing either of those on-demand webinars, you can go to proficiency.org, and this one here will be added to that list shortly. So let's talk about what the agenda is for today. We're going to talk about what is QMS Accreditation Manager. We're going to dig into corrective actions and details. We're going to go through a demo, and then we're going to go ahead and look at the roadmap of what is next, and then answer any type of questions or anything else like that. So that's where we're at. So let's go ahead and jump right on into what is Accreditation Manager. So NAPT has been in the proficiency business for a long time, 25 plus years. And during that time, we've discovered and worked with hundreds, maybe thousands of different organizations. And while we were going through and working with those organizations, we discovered that there always seemed to be kind of this lack of centralized tooling for how to manage accreditation within labs across the industry. So we started on our journey about 15 years ago to go ahead and figure out how we wanted to help the industry by, giving an online tool to help assist in that accreditation management process. So QMS Accreditation Manager, it's an online software that allows any lab to go ahead and manage their accreditation. It's built on top of our 25 years of experience. So there's a lot of individuals who have input into this process. And the key thing to know when you start looking at the modules we'll talk about next is the ability to share tasks and responsibilities across the organization is critical. Too often we find that individual organizations, even when they're small, they're often siloed between different groups, so information doesn't get from point A to point B. So being able to put everything into a centralized place helps with that, breaking down the barriers within the silos. So let's talk about what is in Accreditation Manager. And there's really 7 modules that is in part of the package. We're going to talk about corrective actions today, and in future webinars, we're going to dig into each of these ones in depth. But know that accreditation is more than just simply, ordering an ILCPT or making sure that you meet your scope or something like that. It's really a broad spectrum of ideas and areas. So Accreditation Manager, we have the ability to help you manage your audits, help manage corrective actions. How do you control your documents? Where do they store? How do you have document control? How do you manage your meetings, training as new employees come on board, asset management? And I think the most important one in here, and you're going to see pending actions kind of spread across everywhere inside of Accreditation Manager, and you'll see it in the corrective actions as well, is that as tasks are being done within your organization, how are you able to track them and ensure that individuals are not only being assigned the task, but they're going ahead and followed up on those tasks and completing them in a timely manner. So all 7 of these together give us a comprehensive view on how we can help organizations with their accreditation. So let's just go ahead. We're going to dive right into a demo here real quick. So I'm logged into our Accreditation Manager right now. And just so everyone knows, this is the same set of tools that NAPT uses on a day-to-day basis to be able to provide our services to our customers. So when we say that, we truly use the software, we use it every single day. So here, inside of Accreditation Manager on the left-hand side, we're already logged in. We can see the different modules, and I'm in a car right now. So the very first thing we might want to do is I might want to create a new corrective action. Some event has occurred, and I want to be able to track it, report on it, and understand how it impacts our organization. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Create New Car, PAR, or OFI. And the screen will come up, and it's going to ask you some questions to get you started in this process. At the top, you'll notice the different types, right? And each one has a very different meaning of a corrective action versus a preventative action or an opportunity for improvement. I won't dig into the differences between them, but know that you can create them and identify them however you wish inside your organization. The next thing you'll notice is we're going to go ahead, and when we select it, you'll notice the number below changes. And this is important because as you're tracking your corrective actions across your organization, you want to have a method by which you can easily identify any of the type of, or easily identify what it is, and then the value or the number that's associated with it. So too often we find organizations don't have this structure. So simple questions like what happened on car number 11 doesn't mean anything, and people just throw out terms, and those terms get confused with one car to the other. So simply by having clearly identifiable information or numbering systems is a first huge step in ensuring that organizations can manage their corrective actions. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a car. And it's worth noting you can choose your own naming structure here and numbering. So if you've already had something and you want to start at 2005 or whatever the case is, you can set that in the system as well. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to put in a corrective action issue with height gauge, we'll say. All right, so we had some sort of issue. And then you've got some of the basics, right? When was it identified? When did we log it? When is there a due date? And that's a critical piece. When do we expect to have this car closed? Because that'll go into some of the other reporting stuff later on. So oftentimes, we're logging it today, but it might have been identified, a week ago or something like that. This was entered by me. We're going to go ahead and assign this to a different user, and we'll call it minor, and this was determined by a customer. There's a few things to know before we leave this screen that I want to make sure people understand. The first thing to know is the entered by and assigned to is important, because if you assign it to yourself, we're not going to send a notification to yourself that it's been assigned to you because you created it, But if you enter any car and assign it to another person, that individual will receive an email letting them know that a new car has been created and they've been assigned as the primary person to go ahead and resolve that issue. So that's the first important thing to note. The second item is the date identified, logged, and due date do have value in terms of reporting. For example, if you're an organization and you identify an issue, let's say March 1st, but you don't log it till April 25th, that's actually a problem because you've spent almost 2 months between identification and logging the issue. So we're going to help you run reports on the background that will let you know when you're going through this, do we have a problem from identification to logging? And likewise, if we've logged it on the 13th in this case, and it's not actually completed until, January of next year, that's also a problem. So the dates have a lot of significance so that we can intelligently tell you some of the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. So I'm going to go ahead and create this car. And we see that it updated automatically. You'll notice in the grid, right, there's a handful of things. This is a demo environment, so you'll notice that, I've got a bunch here that are marked as overdue. We're going to highlight them in red, and we're going to notify you when cars are overdue so that you're actively working on them. That's the second big thing we see that happens in organizations. They have a process for a car. They put it in a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet somewhere, but then it just kind of sits there and dies. No one acts on it, works on it until, maybe an audit is coming up or some other action that drives them to have to go look at that. So instead of being reactive, we try to be proactive in our processes with the CAR module. We want to make sure that you're aware that they're there, that due dates are coming up, that this information needs to be acted upon and isn't simply something that just sits there and gets lost in the shuffle. So now that we've created our CAR, I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to open it up, and we can kind of walk through the process of what happens within a CAR, because the first step is to identify it, but then we need to get into kind of the nitty gritty. So at the beginning, I entered in that synopsis. That's great. Then we have a specific description. This is that detailed background of what is the problem, right? So what are the specific information? How do we understand it? How's it going to be investigated? Background, history, personnel, all of these different ways to be able to gather this information, but we want to be able to put it into a singular place so they have that information. And that's the critical piece here. So that's the first step. You've created the details and you've entered it and you've assigned it potentially to that other person so that they can have that. Sarah asks, we have over 1,000 employees. Is there a way to automate their addition to the system? You're talking about in terms of users into the system so that they can log into it. There is a way, you just have to contact us through support and we can kind of help you get everyone imported into the system. So there is definitely a way. But the key thing is you may not want all 1,000 in there as well. It kind of depends on your business needs and we can talk about that as well. So as you work your way through your corrective action, there are different phases of that. First is the details. Second is the root cause, right? What are the items that are being investigated? And you'll see that we go ahead and we specify or give you options to understand what it is. So in this case, maybe it's a process and a procedure issue. And down below in that root cause, and this is the important piece, right? What was the root cause of this problem? We always talk about the 5 whys, right? Why did it happen? How did it happen? All those important things. You want to be as detailed in here because remember, at the end of the day, this corrective action isn't just there to, satisfy some sort of paperwork check mark for you. It's really about improving your organization and having some sort of continuous improvement plan, and that's what the CAR represents. So once we've gotten through our root cause, then we have the plan phase. And keep in mind that although I'm going through these one tab at a time, in the same meeting, realistically, this would happen over days or weeks potentially, depending on the complexity of that corrective action. But the key piece to understand is that as we go through each of these different phases, we want to make sure that we can identify when they're occurring. Because remember, we set those due dates at the beginning. So we want to be able to report on how successful are we in matching the dates that we're trying to accomplish. And this gives us that kind of trail for us. For example, right, I've created this today on the 13th. If this plan portion isn't completed until August, I might want to understand why it took 5 months to be able to get that information. Well, if I'm not tracking the dates and the information, I don't know how long that is. Likewise, you'll notice once I have a plan in place, and let's say I completed the plan and I completed it on, next week on the 20th, the follow-up is someone needs to review that plan. It's typically not yourself, right? The plan, the idea of a corrective action is it's beyond an individual person. So again, being able to track this information and understand if I completed it on this date, but it took 3 months later, we've got an issue within the process. And that's where having a tight system that allows you to kind of track this information is critical. So I'm going to go ahead and say that demo user 2 did it, and they did it on the 22nd, for example. And you'll notice down here, we can mark it as completed. So now we know that the plan itself, it's done, it's solid, we can move forward. The next piece then is the follow-up, right? We need to ensure what was the follow-up to ensure the effectiveness of the plan, and we're going to have the same kind of process. So we're going to have that descriptive details, the close date, who it was closed by, and when we completed this process. And this kind of follows up that entire corrective action process, right? From identification, root cause analysis, the plan, and then the follow-up that the plan was successful. You'll notice that there's two other tabs here, and these ones are critical for this, because oftentimes when you create a corrective action, there are additional tasks that come out of it. For example, maybe this would require me to get information from the manufacturer or a different individual. So I can come in here and I can create pending actions. So I could say I need to get the scope requirements, for example. This is pending. This is a technical issue, and I can set priorities and due dates. So I can set this to Joe the technician and put a due date here. And what's going to happen under the hood is this allows me to create a series of subtasks within my corrective action. And I can then see what pending actions exist out there so that I can understand what are the individual little pieces that are going to happen, but then I can also track and monitor those. The other piece to know is that as pending actions exist inside of a CAR, that's important because it prevents me from being able to close the CAR if there's multiple pending actions still outstanding for it. And that's another important trait to hear is oftentimes people will say a CAR is completed. I've completed the corrective action, but in actuality, there's a handful of subtasks that were never completed as part of the process. So we want to design a way by which we allow individuals to not only track the holistic view, but then also the individual pieces as well. Just like the CAR, when we create the CAR, and an email was sent, the same thing happened for this pending action as well, and that's also important. So as actions are occurring and people are being notified, we're going to continue to go ahead and tell people that new changes are happening outside of that. Nick asks, is it able to do other categories by either corrective or preventative or something to note manually? I mean, ultimately at the end, when you're creating that corrective action, you're going to decide the action type, if it's corrective, preventative, or an OFI. So you can choose from there. At this time, there isn't a way to add additional items to that list, but it's definitely something people have asked about if there's other type of action types and how to add those action types in the future. So it is something we've been looking into. Great question. All right, so we talked about pending actions. The last piece then is attachments, and this is as straightforward as it gets. Oftentimes you have supporting documentation that you need to include with your CAR or your corrective action or preventative action or whatever the case is, and oftentimes that stuff just kind of floats around all over the place. So what happens is you can go ahead and you can upload any type of files you want to this document, and there's two additional items that are coming to this as well that are really exciting. First, we make the assumption that you're going to upload a document, but what if you're using our NAPT's QMS Accreditation Manager and using document management? You may have already uploaded that document. So we're going to give you the ability to link documents from the document manager directly into the CAR. That's one thing that's coming in the near future. The second thing that we're bringing is we understand that sometimes documents exist outside of document management. Maybe it's not a controlled document and it doesn't make sense to have it there, but maybe it exists in SharePoint or some other third-party program. We're going to give you the ability to put in direct links to those other programs so that you can go from the CAR directly to those files that exist in those outside programs. So we really want to be able to what we can do to help you understand where they go. So a couple other questions, right, that came in. Where do I support my supporting evidence? That's right here, right? That's under that attachment. Is there like a max amount I can type, right? There isn't. You'll notice that there's a little arrow here. You can actually drag this thing down and you can make it as big as you want, and you can just keep typing. If you want to write a dissertation about something, you can write a dissertation in here. So there's no limits to the amount of information. There's a question, can we upload video files? Absolutely, you can upload video attachments. Taking this one off the top of my head, if I remember correctly, it's 25 megs as the upload size. So that's plenty for a video. And again, if it was too large, maybe it was maybe it's a 3-hour video of something, you could have it linked to some sort of YouTube channel or something else like that. When we add the ability to add those URLs, you're going to be able to see that in here as well. So that's another way you can handle it. Chuck makes a note about the non-conformance question, right? So if you've been following along, NAPT recently announced a strategic alliance with Indiesoft. So we're also working, and this is one of the modules where we're going to help individuals who use Indiesoft and use the Accreditation Manager to bring the two platforms together to have the places that make the most sense, have them there. All right, other questions? Sorry. Okay, back here, someone asked, I don't use major minor observation for severity. Can I change this or the determined by? Absolutely. None of that is hard coded. You decide what are the fields you want to use for your organization. For the most part, if you see a drop down list somewhere inside of QMS, you have the ability to go ahead and edit that fields, add things, subtract things, do whatever you want at the end of the day. So that's the important piece. And the other question is, can I run reports on this? Yeah, every single car that you see here, you can click down here. If I close under reports, there's a report for you to run for each one that gives you a printable version of it. So it's a nice feature. The question is, can I customize the reports? Not today, but we're always looking forward to different types of features or requests that people might have that they would want to understand. So if you've got a specific example, feel free to share it and we can see what we can do. There's a couple other things that I didn't mention in here that I do want to call out real quick. So up at the top, you'll notice that we can manage tags and I can add different tags to this. The reason the tag exists is a way to help you filter and manage the data. If you're an organization and you have hundreds of cars in your organization, you might want a way for you to be able to, quickly filter or find them. So maybe this is a car that's around, PT planning, for example. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit add, and we'll go ahead and add that tag to that. And that just gives us a really quick way for us to manage them. And why that's important is when we're out on this screen, you'll notice that we can filter by tag. So if I wanted all of them that started with test, there we go. I see all the test tags and vice versa. So that's the first thing to note when you're in here editing the tag. The second one is the site. And this is fairly important and going to be growing in importance. So today we use the site as simply a way to manage which location is this. If you're an organization, you've got 5, 6, 10 different sites, you might want to be able to sort and organize your corrective actions by site. That's a really important thing. Another feature that's coming in the near term is the ability to break off security based on site. So today, I can set inside of the role-based permissions, I can say whether or not you have access to cars, maybe it's read-only access, maybe you only have access to pending actions in a car. I can set all of that information today, but the requests that we've had that we're adding is this ability to do it at a site level. So maybe at the Minneapolis site, I have a quality manager who's going to be able to manage the cars, but they should only see the cars that are in Minneapolis, and another one that's in Los Angeles that they need to see their own, but maybe there's a third person who's in Houston who needs to see Houston's and everyone else's. So that's what we're going to be adding in here, and that's going to be controlled under this site tag or this site ability. So as you manage the site, you'll be able to connect to specific people to be able to access those. So when you're creating the roles and the permissions, that'll be another layer down of permissions that everyone's been looking for. That'll give those larger organizations the ability to be super granular in how they're managing stuff. So that's something that's coming in the near future, but I wanted to share it because it's there, you can see it, and we use the sites today just as a filtering process, but we're adding security on top of it, and that's kind of the key element there. And then obviously, you know, there's other things you can obviously search for stuff, and you can export it out to Excel if you wanted a simple list, all those kind of fun things. So that's the kind of a high level 20-25 minute review of everything that kind of happens inside of CARS. I'm just going to look and see if there's any other questions that I might have missed along the way, so I can make sure that we can get in there. Somebody asked, I'm not signed up for QMS or QMS Accreditation Manager. Can I use just the CAR and nothing else? Absolutely you can, right? There's no requirement that says that you have to use every single module at the same time. And a lot of organizations that we work with, they take it one by one to go ahead and, you know, kind of migrate to Accreditation Manager. So they might start with CARS. That's typically where people start, is in the CARS, because it's kind of the easiest place to get into. And then as time goes on, they go ahead and add that. Sydney, is there going to be future trainings? Absolutely. Our goal is, or our plan, not a goal, we're going to go through each and every single one of these modules. Some we might group together because they're going to be pretty quick, but other ones might take a little longer. So we want to go through each one and have that video so people can go back and kind of just see how it works so they can understand. And then we obviously have online help training as well. Is there any other questions? I think that's it. All right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to jump back to the demo, or not the demo, excuse me, to the slideshow. And again, if you've got a question, feel free to throw it into the chat. So we talked about 8 different places, right? You have the ability to add an unlimited number of records. There's no limit, so you know it could be 1 card, 10 cards, 1,000 cards, all that kind of way. The second one, you can search by the type and year to identify the gaps, right? So are we missing stuff? The other thing we find all too often is individuals oftentimes discover, we discover that they'll create a car and they get in the habit of like, they'll create 1 or 2 right away. But then they'll like go off on this gap for months and then suddenly they'll do it again. So sometimes just having that centralized place is really a good way of, as a reminder. CARs, PARs, OFIs, you can build all of them. You can link your CAR to other modules. So we didn't talk about the audit module, for example, but you might have a corrective action that comes out of your audit. That's a very common thing. You can link that CAR back to the audit. We can track it from the start to the finish. We have those pending actions or those kind of subtasks, and then those printable reports, and then the roll up for everything as well. So if you do have hundreds of locations, but you want to roll up all the cars to a single place, as long as you have permissions, you can see all of them. So it's very exciting. So things we have said that that's coming soon, right? We have site-by-site security. That's important. We have additional advanced filtering on tags and sites and stuff to make it easier to find items. For individuals who use NAPT services for ILCPTs, we're going to have the ability to link from the customer portal back into Accreditation Manager to a CAR, which is also a super common thing that can happen. So having that type of link. And then as mentioned before, I didn't add it to the slide, but we do know that we've got, in the future, we've got that IndieSoft relationship that's coming. And CAR is the first place, or one of the first places we're looking at. So if you want to try this out, you may not be subscribed to Accreditation Manager today, and I understand that. But if you want to try this out, I encourage you to email us at napt@proficiency.org. We'll go ahead and set you up with a demo account. That way you can test this at your own pace, right? You'll have access to all the features. You can trial it for 30 days. And what we'll do is we'll limit it just to the car module, because oftentimes when people get in there, there's just so much that's happening, and they kind of get, I don't want to say overwhelmed, but there's a lot of things they could get into. So I always tell people, you want to go in with a specific task. And in this case, if you want to demo that out, feel free to demo it. Yeah, the agreement's already in place with IndySoft. We're working with some trial customers right now on how that integration is going to look from both sides. So that's kind of it's an in-flight thing, but we don't have any dates to announce or anything like that at this time. All right, any other question? That was 30 minutes right on the dot. So as always, we'll take this presentation. Usually takes a day or two, but we'll add this to our website, just like the other webinars we've done, so that you can watch it back on demand. If you have questions, feel free to email us at this email, napt@proficiency.org. We'll be happy to answer them, get you into a car demo, all those other things. And then, we'll also have, like I said, we'll have future webinars. So cars was the first place. We're going to continue to kind of deep dive into all sorts of different places. So again, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Bye now.